Samuel Little was a notorious serial killer who terrorized the United States for decades. Born on June 7, 1940, in Reynolds, Georgia, Little's early life was marked by poverty and hardship. He had a difficult childhood and dropped out of high school at the age of 16. Little's life took a dark turn in the 1960s when he began committing crimes such as robbery and assault. He was arrested and imprisoned several times over the next few decades, but always managed to evade justice. However, it wasn't until the 1980s that Little began his reign of terror as a serial killer. He began targeting vulnerable women, many of whom were prostitutes, drug addicts, or homeless. Often the little one would pick up his victims in taverns or on the street and lure them to a secluded place, where he would strangle them to death. Little was a cunning and devious killer who managed to evade detection for many years. He moved frequently, moving from state to state and changing his appearance to avoid suspicion. He was also very careful not to leave any physical evidence behind, which made it difficult for the police to tie him to his crimes. Despite his best efforts, Little was eventually caught in 2012 when he was arrested on a drug charge in Kentucky. DNA evidence linked him to the murders of 3 women in Los Angeles in the 1980s, and he was later charged with the murder. Little's trial was a media sensation, as journalists from around the world descended on the courtroom to cover the proceedings. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and in 2014 he was found guilty of 3 counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But this is just the beginning. As the detectives dig deeper into Little's past, they begin to realize that he was responsible for far more murders than they had originally suspected. In fact, Little eventually admitted to killing 92 women between 1970 and 2005, making him the most prolific serial killer in American history. What made Little particularly terrifying was his iron memory. He could remember details of his crimes with amazing clarity, often recalling the names and faces of his victims years or even decades later. In fact, he was able to draw sketches of many of his victims, which helped investigators identify them. Little's crimes rocked the planet, and his name became synonymous with evil. But they also highlighted the importance of forensic science in catching criminals. Were it not for the advances in DNA technology that have taken place in the 21st century, Little might not have been punished for his crimes. Today, Little Samuel remains behind bars, a cautionary tale of the darker side of human nature. His crimes will never be forgotten, and his victims will always be remembered.